In the 1100s, a monk named Hugh of St. Victor, and a very clever monk indeed, talked about how you can use a box like this and coins like these to create a mental matrix in your mind that would help you learn more faster. But here's the kicker about Hugh of St. Victor's description and his guide that he wrote. It wasn't made for adult scholars. He wrote it addressed to children, and he started them so young that they had a shot at developing into top achievers who not only studied well, but understood geometry expertly enough to build cathedrals that would stand the test of time. I'm talking about the monastery of St. Macarius the Great, that kind of thing, which is a building that has been continually inhabited since its construction in the year 360, or the roads and the bridges still standing in Rome. And that's not to mention the equally important accomplishments, such as having an understanding of music so deep that you could create compositions that still inspire us to this day, thanks to a box and some coins. We'll get to the mental matrix that Hugh has in mind for us with this box, but we can't sleepwalk into this, because these days we're navigating through a time during which so many wonderful things are happening with technology, but at the same time, students at universities are getting caught for having their essays essentially written by artificial intelligence, not only their essays, but their take-home exams. Then lawyers keep getting sanctioned for filing briefs that cite court cases that don't exist. These were cases that were hallucinated by chatbots. Now, this is not a diatribe against artificial intelligence. I think there's a lot of wonderful things going on and many more wonderful things to come. But in these particular cases, I think we need to bring back Hugh of St. Victor more than ever before. Not only bring him back, bring him into fashion, bring him into practice and our training. So if you want to follow along, the medieval craft of memory has the most important memory writings of Hugh of St. Victor, and I highly recommend that you read it. But the writing has dated, and I'm trained to read ancient texts, so let me give Hugh of St. Victor's instructions in a step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of format. And it starts with the first step, right now. So our man in Hugh of St. Victor Dam, he suggests that you build a line in your mind. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, up to 10. For now, if you find it helpful, you can grab a ruler and hold it in your hands, because this is what I think he's asking you to imagine. A line in space, like I'm tracing with my finger now, from the left to the right, or the right to the left if you prefer. We know that not everyone can see images, so if you can't, seriously, go get a ruler and then use your finger like I'm doing now to mark out those lines, to give yourself a lived experience of a line in space. This will help you succeed with the ancient memory techniques that Hugh still has for you. All right. Now, mentally, you want to be able to close your eyes and think about where position 1 is in your line, and then move to 2, to 3, to 4, up to 10. And that's the foundation. Because this line now exists for you, you can hear or read a number when you're needing to learn something, and you can give it a location. Now, this is not a standard memory palace, and I believe what Hugh is offering the young people that he was writing his guide for, he's offering them an exercise. But just start to play around with how this can work for you. If you say the number 7 right now, 7 should now snap to that spot that you indicated in space. The same way hearing your street address really brings your mind to where your home is on a street. And so numbers are locations. And then once we have that basis in our mind, we can weave all kinds of information together with space, and we can expand all kinds of spaces in a variety of ways. But you've got to be able to navigate a simple line in space numbered 1 to 10. Now, how did Hugh of St. Victor use this technique? Well, one way was to memorize the entire book of Psalms, all 150 of them, word for word. And back then, having access to this kind of information was very important. But the same techniques apply to whatever you need to remember today. It can be complex charts and diagrams for work. It can be the names of dozens of people that you meet, complex terminology, computer programming, etc. One problem that a lot of people have is they ask me, well, how does this apply to my topic? And then they feel like their topic is special or unique and requires some additional memory techniques. And the reality is that there may be a few little extra steps here and there, but what you're going to do with greater ease always starts with the foundations. So learn the basics of what Hugh is talking about. Hugh even states that the basics are a law. As he puts it, the memory always rejoices in brevity of length and paucity of number. That's some of that antiquated language I was talking about. But nonetheless, what he's trying to say is, if you can't memorize just 10 things along a line in space, how are you going to deal with thousands? And so he pointed this out 900 years ago. And what he's also talking about is what psychologists now call chunking. So in memory science, we know that if you break information down into smaller parts, you'll have a chance at remembering it better. So this is the initial procedure. Make a line in space and subdivide it. Not only can a child do it, but literally children did do it. Churches got built because they were able to learn and deeply remember the laws that governed geometry. Music got composed, and the world progressed beautifully thanks to better memory during the medieval period and the Renaissance. And we've lost a lot of this ability to deeply absorb and remember information. So now you have a starting point, and this is the beginning of a mnemonic grid. And in order to have this not fall apart in your practice, Hugh already came up with some problems and solutions that people experience when they are using these kinds of techniques. So if you're enjoying this discussion so far of the ancient memory arts via Hugh of St. Victor, hit subscribe if you're new here. Give this tutorial a like, and remember, this channel exists for one reason. When your memory gets better, everything gets better. For your studies, for your work, for the conversations you hold, for your confidence, and for the lives of all of the people with whom you interact. So raise all ships by getting involved with this work that I do through the Magnetic Memory Method project. Okay, so step one, if we can review, was to develop a line in space and segment it into 10 individual locations right in front of you. The next step is to essentially eyeball how much information you need to memorize and then develop a bigger set of lines into a grid. Now, untrained minds in our era who have never heard of these techniques before often get quite skeptical and squeamish. And I know it can be difficult to imagine memorizing 150 Psalms based purely on a grid in your mind. Now, Hugh himself would say, just do the math, brother. You might feel like you're putting the cart ahead of the horse and then letting yourself get spooked by both the cart and the horse. But in reality, this is just a developmental exercise at this point. You need to start developing the tools. So the next step is where things start to get more robust, but it's still developmental, because in order to memorize something like 150 Psalms, you need to assign the first part of each item to a numbered station. So let's stick with the Psalms. Not the entirety of any given Psalm, not yet. Basically, the example, as I understand what he's talking about, is you take the first word of the first Psalm, which is blessed. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, I think is how it goes, right? But just the word blessed, that number one point on the line in front of you, this imaginary one, gets the word blessed. You weave it together. And then Psalm 2 gets the word why, I think it is. And because that line starts with why the Gentiles raged, I think, you now take number 2 and you put the word why. In order to make words like blessed and why really pop in your mind, Hugh gives us the classics that we know from the art of memory, which essentially are things like having very specific people in that space and then dressing them up strangely. So in the case of the word blessed, I have my friend Brad, because his name starts with B, and I have him dressed up as the Pope to really drive it home, and he's blessing things, dancing on that number 1. For why, you're going to think about how you can turn that question mark into something really vibrant and strange. And you could even have someone whose name starts with a W, like William Shakespeare, asking why. And he used the word why quite a bit. Why I have not another tear to shed, besides this sorrow as an enemy, and would usurp upon my watery eyes and make them blind with tributary tears, and on and on and on. So make sure that you do that foundational work. It's not that difficult. And then let's assume that you've worked 10 words into your line. And just start there. Once that you can master that, you'll be able to walk that line in your mind forward and backward, and then you can start in the middle and move to the beginning, start in the middle, move to the end, and then you can go from the word on the first station to the third station to the fifth station to the seventh station, and then the ninth station, and then 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, and that's going to help get all of the words into long-term memory. Purely in your mind, not even using a memory palace. The key is to develop that first line in your grid so you know what it feels like to use this technique. Then the next thing is to start building that grid. So you take that number 1 and now you build a line forward into space. And you do that from each of the numbers. So 2 has a line that moves forward out into space, 3 and 4 and so on. And then these lines can be numbered or alphabetized. So ultimately what happens is on the basis of 1 to 10, you have another set of 1 to 10 moving forward away from you. You have another set of 1 to 10 moving backwards behind you. You have another set of 1 to 10 moving upwards and another set of 1 to 10 moving downwards. And if you have the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, you can learn how to add these grids into standard memory palaces. Either way, I suggest you spend some time with these grids and see if you can build a 10 by 10 grid, and just to see how you go. But make sure you encode some information in order to feel what it's like to navigate those points in space when you have layered something in there with strange images like my friend Brad blessing people like the Pope. Now, like any good guide to memory improvement, Hugh of St. Victor talked about troubleshooting problems. And, one of the major things that people struggled with back then is the same thing that people struggle with now. For one thing, Hugh noticed that his students, including children, would try to find some other way to use these techniques. There must be an easier way or some alternative is a protest that has filled my own email inbox for years and the comments on my YouTube channel, etc. And you know what? If there were other ways to do this that actually worked very, very well, I'd be shouting about them from the mountaintops. But for Hugh, the solution was very, very simple. What he said is, just stick with one teaching until you master it. And this is very, very important in the world of memory training, because what happens is that a lot of people abandon the difficulties when actually the difficulties are very, very desirable. And Hugh of St. Victor goes deep into this in another book called The Didascalicon. And it's so interesting that nothing has changed. If you don't seize upon these difficulties, you don't push into what actually works, you're not going to get the results. So just accept that you've got to be the one who pushes yourself. No one's going to push you on your behalf. You've got to coach yourself a little bit. Now, another problem that Hugh highlights is consistency. And it's admittedly difficult until that you get the ball rolling enough that you get used to completing these exercises and using these memory techniques. That's why I hold live boot camps where we can get together, complete the exercises together. And, I think often of Kit's review on Trustpilot of one of my boot camps, and you can see it on the screen, and she talks about the fun activities that we engage in. And that's truly where the emphasis falls. I have a lot of fun. I show you how I make it fun, and then it just rubs off on you, and you're going to get even more enjoyment out of the results. So if you would like to make sure that you find out about new sessions, make sure to sign up for notification of my upcoming Ancient Memory Arts live cohort course. And we're going to get together and you'll get access to early registration, which is going to empower you when it comes to keeping focused on mastering your memory, being consistent, sticking with one approach before skipping off to the next. And I will support you by giving you more secrets from more memory masters so that you really understand how our ancients carried entire books in their minds when they couldn't carry them on their backs. This is about building truly robust neuronal connections from the get-go. Now, when it comes to crafting these associations that you place on the numbered stations that you're going to develop along these mental lines, Hugh takes even his young students into the deep end of advanced mnemonics. Now, I'm going to change the words a little bit, but basically what he says is that you need to develop the foundation of the foundation. So it's basically a questioning process he advises you to use in order to inform how you're using associations to encode. So what I'm talking about is like using my friend Brad for the word blessed. So as you read a book or you listen to a lecture, you're always asking, who is doing what? When are they doing it? And when? And how can I make this alive with a person? This might sound abstract if you're new to memory techniques, but it's really just a version of what I'm saying. That first psalm starts with the word blessed. So I have my friend Brad, but I'm asking, what can I use here? Where can he be doing this, right? Then later in Psalm 1, when the word scornful comes up, I think about a band like Korn with Superman. So scornful, S plus Korn, Superman plus Korn. And Superman sits with them in the seat of the scornful, as this opening of Psalm 1 goes. Now, I can spend all day going through all my examples on a word-by-word basis, but what is key for you to understand is asking the questions that help you derive the associations so that everything you read and hear and want to remember can attach to these designated spaces without difficulty and rapidly. That's a quote from Hugh of St. Victor. Without difficulty and rapidly. I believe each and every single person can get there and have associations within seconds. So Hugh is teaching an architecture where you build the scaffold and then you develop the skill of laying bricks, magnetic mnemonic bricks that help you recall information. Now, call me old-fashioned for sitting here in the age of AI pushing the foundational skill and the foundation of the foundation behind, let's call it what it is, the liberal arts. But it's still true. Memory isn't just one skill amongst many. Memory is the skill that makes all other skills possible. So Hugh has one really interesting idea that encompasses this whole philosophy. It's one of my favorite images, and it has to do with this box and the coins inside. So imagine a money changer at his table with a wooden box. Basically, we're talking about the medieval equivalent of a cash register, and the man operating it is a cashier. Now, the interior of the box is divided into compartments, one for each type of coin, one for the dimes, one for the quarters, one for the pennies, one for the nickels, etc. When the money changer is reaching in, his hands fly to the exact coin. No fumbling, no confusion, just what he wants when he wants it. Because these compartments exist, they've been studied, they've been practiced, and the speed of selecting the needed coin is rapid and certain. And Hugh then delivers the punchline. He says that confusion is the mother of ignorance and forgetfulness. And he says, orderly arrangement builds your intelligence while securing stronger memory. So, treat Hugh's exercise for what it is, a developmental exercise that will help you organize your thoughts, build your skills with memory techniques. And if you want to develop more with turning grids into complete memory palace networks for exams, certifications, learning languages, memorizing scripture, make sure to sign up so you're notified in time to get registered for the upcoming Ancient Memory Arts live cohort. And I've also got something very beautiful for you when you do, which is a very exclusive additional training that is only for people who register for notification. And if you want another exercise from the ancient world here on YouTube that's going to help increase your mental organization as online forces continue to challenge your concentration, learn the memory wheel technique next, along with the story of a man named Giordano Bruno. He was so mentally organized, he gave the Inquisition a run for their money, and he used memory wheels extensively in his practice. Literally, he was so sharp that after 8 years of imprisonment and torture, he could still use his memory and memory wheels to make arguments that the Inquisition needed to take 2 weeks to consider, pausing his trial so that they actually could make sure that, they had the evidence that would allow them to actually put him to death because they didn't want to make a mistake. He had friends in certain high places. Bruno was an incredibly talented language learner too. So check out how a rogue monk memorized every language he touched. Next, learn the memory wheel. get registered for the Ancient Memory Arts Live program so you're notified, and the additional free video. And until we have a chance to speak again, keep organizing your mind like coins in a cash box, and keep yourself, as I always like to say, magnetic.